Here's a story about how I smacked a Japanese student upside the head with a textbook in the middle of class. Full disclosure, it wasn't because she was sleeping, misbehaving, or using improper English. It was actually completely accidental, so before you call the cops on me, just at least hear me out. In Kuroshio and in Japan proper, people love them some nature. They can't get enough of it. So much so, many schools keep their windows and doors open all day. If you've seen Japanese school windows before, you know those suckers are massive, and they seem to never have screens in them. Of course, Japanese people don't just do this for their love of the great outdoors. It also gets ridiculously humid in parts of Japan, so cranking the windows open spares the air conditioner. And I guess as a side effect, it cools the students and teachers down too. Now, here's another fun fact about Kochi. If you walk 10 seconds into any forest, you'll immediately find yourself in Jurassic Park. Giant centipedes, giant spiders, giant dragonflies, giant bees, and giant murder hornets are just a taste of the wildlife you can expect to get acquainted with. Now, picture this: a building, perhaps a school, with its windows and doors open all day, sitting in the middle of Jurassic Park. Guess what creepy crawlies also want an English lesson? The answer is all of them. So here I was, standing in the middle of a sauna called English class, trying my best not to melt. Suddenly, a dragonfly the size of my hand careens into the classroom. It buzzes over several students' heads and they recoil in moderate annoyance. Not satisfied with their reaction, the creature decides to hover over one girl's head for 5 excruciating seconds. She shrinks down and swats at the dragonfly, but her retaliation only emboldens the beast. It thinks it is a helicopter, and her head is its shiny landing pad. Nothing was going to stop it from initiating a perfect 6-point landing. Nothing except for the sweaty Canadian Sasquatch on a caffeine withdrawal, wielding a rolled-up copy of New Horizon. I pulled back, took aim, and proceeded to annihilate the back of my student's head. Now, of course, her head was perfectly curved to redirect my attack up to the dragonfly, exactly according to plan, and I sent it sailing out of the class window. Surprisingly enough, the student continued writing and didn't even acknowledge that I walloped her. She also didn't acknowledge that I saved her from that vicious dragonfly, so I guess that's fair. The incident also seemed to go unnoticed by the rest of the class and my JTE. The moral of the story? I'm not sure. I do know, for some reason I can't quite comprehend, I'm not allowed to join the baseball club. On a nice hot 30+ degree day, I was invited to learn how to surf with a few other ALTs. Here in Kuroshio, there is a surf dojo run by a suave team of Australians and Canadians. I took the local train to the beach, tucked on a wetsuit shirt that was flattering in all of the wrong ways, covered my head with a boonie hat, the epitome of surfing fashion, and learned how to shred some gnar. First, we learned how to lie and balance on the board and catch a wave. Stepping into the ocean for the first time that afternoon, the water was a little brisk, but my body quickly adapted to the temperature. After riding a few waves on our stomachs, we went back to the beach and were taught how to stand on the surfboard. My goal that day was actually just to stand up on the board. I figured setting my surfing expectations a little low couldn't hurt. Once back in the ocean, I managed to not only stand up, but ride several waves all the way to the beach. It's a strange and satisfying feeling, similar to how skiing, skating, or riding a bike feels. That perfect combination of balance and inertia, knowing you could fall at any moment but trusting your instincts to keep you steady. Anyway, I probably drank half the ocean that day and got a wicked stomachache. Also, the bottom of my ribs were sore from lying on the board. Despite those war wounds, overall, I had a fantastic time, and I'm looking forward to trying surfing once more. Driving in Japan, I've grown accustomed to the narrow streets, the lower speed limits, and the fact that red lights sometimes don't exist. For the last 6 months, I was limited in my ability to travel because I didn't own my own car and instead drove the Board of Education's vehicle. With it, I was allowed to commute home, to schools, or to the BOE. But not anymore. Within this last month, I purchased my own vehicle, and now this Bassan got a whole lot bolder. To give you some details, it's a Suzuki MR wagon. I paid in cash, about $1,500 Canadian, or 150,000 yen. Quite cheap considering the used truck I bought back home was $10,000. I test drove the wagon. It had about 100,000 kilometers, which is pretty good for a used vehicle. I got help from my Board of Education setting up the insurance plan, which is about $700 Canadian, or 70,000 yen per year. Seems expensive, but trust me, the insurance for men my age back in Canada is well in the thousands, so it's actually not a bad deal. Now that about sums up the facts. Don't get me wrong, public transport in Japan is world class. I agree with what Chris Broad has to say about the Japanese public transportation system. Even rural areas have trains and bus routes to help people get around, and I've utilized these plenty. They're almost always on time, clean, a little expensive, but a great way to travel. However, the time spent waiting for a train to arrive and the fact that trains just stop running at night makes them a little inconvenient. Also, trains will only get you so far, and plenty of what's interesting to do and see in rural Japan requires a vehicle. So, now that I have a car, I think I'm going to spend some time on weekends exploring deeper into the mountains and further along the coastline, when I have free time. I also want to check out some shops and tourist destinations in my local area. But finding free time to escape this summer has been a challenge, as my weekends have been full of fun things to do, like standing a few feet away from a kiln full of molten lava and poking it with a metal stick. Now, you might have a few questions. Where did you find a kiln full of lava? Why were you poking it with a stick? What the hell is a kiln anyway? Well, in Kuroshio there is a man who forges art and dishware from molten glass. It's dangerous and impressive work. With a technique called glass blowing, my fellow Kuroshio ALTs and I were able to make up our own glass cups. Here's how it's done. You stick a hollow metal tube into the kiln. A kiln is basically a lava blender. Let the metal rod collect sticky molten glass and then blow into the end of it. Amazingly, the glass blows up like a 10,000 degree balloon. After that, you use pliers and other instruments to shape the heated glass. It took about 20 minutes per person, and I think all of our cups turned out quite well. You were only allowed to select 2 different colors for your glass, or a pre-mixed set of colors. So I selected a nice pre-mix of white, yellow, and red. I mean, what more can I say? Playing with lava is fun. Also, on strange things I've done in Japan, I harnessed my inner Walter White and cooked up a jank homebrew batch of umeshu. Umeshu is a Japanese plum liqueur that is popularly made by Japanese families in the summer. It's actually quite simple. You take plums, your choice of hard alcohol, I use cheap whiskey, and rock sugar. Throw those bad boys together in a sterile glass jar, seal it in a cool dark place for half a year to a full year, and bam! You got yourself some umeshu. Now, I would recommend you look up a quick recipe and make sure you keep things sterile and clean if you plan to make umeshu yourself. Also, as a fair warning, the Japanese plums used in the recipe actually aren't edible until they have completed sitting in the alcohol, and until they are ready, they will give you a wicked stomachache. If I survive the next half year in Japan, and then survive drinking my umeshu, I'll report back on how it tastes. In the meantime, a coworker was actually kind enough to give me some early. It's sweet, a little tangy, and the plum flavor definitely shines through in a pleasant, refreshing way. It's dangerously good. I would drink umeshu chilled or mixed with soda for best results, but go easy on the stuff. It could be around 40% alcohol, which is the same as most hard liquor. So here's my obligatory teaching report. Outside of literally beating English textbooks into my students' heads, it's been going okay. I still do a 10 to 15 minute presentation about once a week about culture or something I'm interested in. The last one I did, I was talking about gun laws in Canada versus Japan. Students were surprised to learn that not only can Canadians easily own many guns, but also that children aged 12 can shoot a gun and apply for a license to use and carry a gun unsupervised. I was actually planning to give this presentation before the horrible elementary school attack happened in the United States. It was the first presentation I've given where every last student was glued to what I was saying. I'll bet no one with as much experience with firearms as me has ever spoken to them about the topic before. I also want to point out in my presentation, I presented guns as neutrally as possible. Guns are obviously a very contentious political issue back home, but I want students to think for themselves and draw their own conclusions about it. I want to teach my students how to think, not what to think. Anyway, it was a good exposure to a piece of Western culture for them. Next time I'll present something a little more lighthearted, like Dungeons and Dragons. Until next time, take care and be bold.